Okay then, we've had 20 team previews. We've been through every single team, looked at their roster, looked at what they could do, looked at their coaching, and now it's time to put them all together in some lovely, juicy power rankings, am I right? It is mere days until the kickoff of the Overwatch League, and it's about time we did our final power rankings before the league starts. But something we've never done on this channel is divided them up into regions. So that is what we're going to do. The East region has 8 teams, the West region has 12 teams. We are going to be starting off in the West today, with the West region, all of the NA and EU teams competing it out alongside each other for the crown of the West, and then go into tournaments against the East. It's going to be really, really interesting, and we have some significant absentees in the West region this year, one very big one in particular who's moved over to the East region, which is going to change things. But, however, a lot of teams, as we've been seeing, have made some incredibly significant improvements, which means that this league is probably going to be very competitive this year. And so, it's going to make for some incredibly interesting games, interesting tournaments, and lead-ups to those tournaments. So, let's take a look at this then, 12 teams in the West region. We're going to start from bottom to top. That's how we always do it. Now, number 12. It is the Vancouver Titans. I don't think it can be anyone else. Last season it would have been the Boston Uprising, but Boston Uprising have made significant improvements. Vancouver, it's been some days since their team preview, but as you can tell, who's high on the Vancouver Titans? Who's saying they're going to be good? Because they're not. Their roster does not look great. It really doesn't. It doesn't look like it can compete with the rest of the league. It just looks all round rough. And there's no way to beat around the bush with that. It looks like the worst roster in the West, and it probably will be the worst roster in the West. And that's the way it is. It's had very little investment. There's very little impetus. There's only 2 coaches. It's like skeleton staff at points as well. It's just a team that's just there and exists. There's no willingness to improve or willingness to push forward. So that's what it is with the Vancouver Titans. But number 11 is the Paris Eternal. Now, there's a lot of debate about a lot of these, to be quite honest. Paris Eternal could be higher. I think it's heavily meta dependent though. If we go to a dive meta, Paris will suffer, almost certainly. But if we do get dragged into a more brawly meta, then Paris will be like, yes, quids in, boys. But Paris, I think, will be meta one-tricks to a certain extent. Especially with that heavy EU presence, obviously, and Dawn and things like that. I really think they're going to be suffering with that. There's a lot of there's major inexperience as well with the likes of Naga and Khan, who are going to obviously have issues. Neptuno, on the other hand, is well on the other side of that career span. He's well at the end, if you see what I mean. Which, again, is he going to be able to keep up with the rest of the league now? That's a very big question. However, there's something to highlight about a lot of these teams. Is the DPS lines are really good. Even with Vancouver, it's still good. But Paris have got Naga and Onigod backed up by Suna, and that's not a bad DPS line. However, the people above them have got really good DPS lines as well. So I think that's fair for Paris right now, but they could overachieve. That's for sure. At number 10, we have the Boston Uprising. Now, Boston have improved. There's nothing, you can't doubt the improvements Boston have made, bringing in Valentine, I'm 37, Stand 1 as well, alongside Faith. They look like they have a better roster than last year, but there is the caveat that it's Boston. I don't trust Boston to get stuff done. I really don't. And I've seen some slightly worrying things. People are saying Boston have scrimbucks, right? Scrimbucks, half the time, mean nothing. Nothing. It depends what scrims they won, it depends how they're winning them, and what they're running. There is a lot to analyse apart from the result of a scrim. Incredibly. Can't stress that enough. So, the problem with Boston, when I've seen them in a competitive environment with this new roster, it was the Steel Series Invitational, where they tried to force Genji, and almost lost the Paris Eternal. That already sets alarm bells ringing, majorly. And I think they have some meta holes, especially Tracer. So I worry. I really do worry. I think Boston could be a lot better than where I've put them, but I don't trust them to get the job done. I never trust them to get the job done. So I have to rank them low. Because I'm going on my gut feeling, and my gut feeling thinks Boston are still going to be struggling somewhat. They're not going to be bottom of the league. They're not going to be bottom at all. Vancouver, Paris. But they are going to be still fairly low, I think. They're not going to be a massive climber in the power rankings with their changes. And there's still the off ones like Punk on the main tank. How's that going to work? And things like that. Oh, on the off tank, I should say. Like, how's that going to work with this roster? It's just a lot of question marks still. If they brought in Gablesy instead of going to the Uprising Academy, that could have been a big swayer of power rankings. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there with Boston in 9th. 9th and 8th are incredibly difficult for me. Incredibly difficult. Because I had a massive debate with myself between Houston and London. Because, it's difficult. London may not have the best of rosters. Like, the best, there's no doubt about that. London are not going to have a top half roster. But Houston, they have great DPS. But their Junkbuck is come in, right? But he's only co-head coach, he's not head coach. Because Harsh is still there. Which, alarm bells ring. Then you've got the support line of Crimzo and GB, which I don't trust. Like, that GB could be a massive find, or he could be a massive flop, and it would cause Houston to have one of the worst support lines in the entire league this season, which is worrying. Their tank line is mediocre, but the DPS have incredible potential. Incredible, and they have a lot of them. So, yeah. I don't know where to put Houston at times. They could do a lot better than expected, especially if Piggy and Django do well. But I don't. It is a very similar thing to Boston. The way I look at the setup, I don't trust them. So I'm putting Houston 9th. And I'm putting London 8th. And the reason I put London 8th is because of those Houston issues. Plus, London are coming in as a gelled roster pretty much. They are coming in with the likes of Hattie and Molfig, which is a tank line that's been together for years. Ripper and Calyx have been together for a year. All four of those players playing on British Hurricane. They know each other inside and out. How they play, how it works. They're bringing in some new DPS players. Blase, Hybrid, Shax and Sparker. Sparker is not eligible yet. So that's going to be a weird one. But the core of the team has got more synergy than some of these Overwatch League teams have got. It's got more synergy than probably the Atlanta Rain tanks have got. So that's where London probably get their benefits. That's where London will probably get their clutch plays. However, London do lack in the quality department. And therefore, they can't go any higher. They can't start competing with the likes of Toronto, etc. But I think it will put them above the likes of the Outlaws, especially early on in the season. And the reason I think London are better than Paris, for example, is because I think London will be less so slaves to the meta. Because Molfig and Hattie, when they won European contenders, and especially in the second half of last year, we saw a lot of ball from Hattie and things like that, and they look decent on it, right? So that's something I worry that Paris just don't have. They just don't have that. So that's why London are there, and again, it's really close between Houston and London. I would have easily swapped them around, but it's difficult. Number 7, Atlanta Rain. This is because they've got a decent support line, Massa and Iris. They've been together for a year now, and I think they will be good. Hawk and Gator haven't changed. It's what they were running last season. Again, they will be good. They will be not setting the world alight, but they'll be good. And then their DPS line, Edison, Pelican, Kai. That's a really good DPS, and I actually really like it. I really like it. The problem with the Atlanta Rain is not necessarily in their players. I think the players could push this Atlanta Rain team higher. However, their coaches have been terrible at times. Now, I know that the Atlanta Reign have recruited. They've brought in Unter, which is a really good addition, but Sefi, I don't know. Some of the stuff we saw from this Atlanta Reign coaching staff last season just leaves scars on Atlanta Reign fans, I know that for a fact. So, yeah, I can't put them any higher. There's potential in these teams though, don't get me wrong, they have more potential than the likes of London, in my opinion, to really push forward with those players. Anyway, top half of these West standings, or West power rankings then, number 6, this is a very firm 6. I think they will be around this point. I certainly don't think they'll be any higher, because it's Toronto. Toronto, they were the last people I put on this list, because basically everyone else was more of a debate, and Toronto were just like, well, they'll fit in there. Because Toronto are not great, like they're not top tier. They're also not bottom tier, right? They're not really solidly bottom half, they're not really solidly top half, they're just middle of the league. I think they will plug away, get some good results, maybe some surprise ones at times, but also I think they will drop a few weird matches. I think that's very, very, very possible from Toronto Defiant, and that's why I've kind of put them where they are. However, it is an improvement on what Toronto Defiant were. Like, you can't argue that support line of Anson, J, Aztec and Lastro is much better than where they were. And they now have a great main tank in Sado, however inconsistent he might be. But it does still have its holes. He's just not going to be a top tier hit scan, nor is Logix. Neist is questionable, and we have to wait and see if he pops off. Michelle is also another questionable one, and Beast, I guess he'll keep the chairs warm on the bench. I don't know. I really don't know why they re-signed Beast. So yeah, Toronto are just kind of, they're meh. And they're a team that I think could be usurped by Atlanta Reign if Atlanta Reign coaches play it right. So coaches of Atlanta Reign, please play it right. Number 5, Dallas Fuel. So, Dallas, some people will want higher, some people will want lower. Dallas is always a controversial subject. However, Dallas Fuel, no doubt, probably the best Dallas Fuel roster we've ever seen. And this roster has aims of being the very best. Will it be the very best? No, I don't think so. Simply because I think it has holes. I think Sparkle is not as flexible as needed at times. And if he's going to change that, it's going to take time. So unless he's extremely grinded in the off-season and they've done some amazing stuff over at the Dallas Fuel, he is going to take a while to really hit the front foot. Unless we fall into some sort of Pharah Doom Genji meta, which is, Doom is possible, but Genji's not right now, and Pharah's very unlikely either. So we are seeing a bit of Mei, quite a bit of Mei, and that's not great. Not great for Sparkle. You do have Doha and XC though, which is good, although XC can rely on the McCree a little bit too much at times. Fearless does not want to get drawn into a ball meta. Please don't get Fearless drawn to a ball meta. At all costs, avoid that, Dallas. But, however, Dallas could be higher than this. If we end up playing a lot of Winston Dive, Dallas will be higher than this, because that is just, you know, that is the elixir for Dallas Fuel. If they have to play Dive with a Winston, that'll just be great for them. It'll be the best meta they can possibly hit. And they will pop off big time. But there is some weirdness to the Dallas Fuel, and again, it's a little bit of mistrust. I trust them more than ever, but it is a little bit of mistrust. So number 4 is Florida Mayhem. Now this is the team that people might put below Dallas. However, I am a believer in the Florida Mayhem, because I think they are going to be a very big dark horse in this season. Florida Mayhem have improved in every single area. The only question is main tank. So, Florida Mayhem of last year had Chris on main support. He was a massive weakness for them. They were like, bye-bye Chris, off you go, bring in Slime. Slime is great. I love Slime. Great partner for Gangnam Jin if it's not going to be Lige gone. So, Florida have a fantastic support line in my opinion. Gargoyle is a great off-tank. Like, great off-tank. Really starting to push things. Yaki BQB have remained. That is massive. 2 fantastic DPS players. They are now backed up by Checkmate, who is another fantastic DPS player. Then we come to the main tank. They lose Fate for bringing OG. OG has not succeeded at Dallas and Gladiators, but the caveat to that is they were both mixed rosters. This is an entirely Korean roster. If OG works, Florida Mayhem could be massive this season, in my opinion. They are a team to keep an eye on, but they could underachieve because of OG. And that could open the door for a team like Dallas Fuel or maybe even Toronto. So that's why they're not higher, because these three teams that are above them are ridiculously solid in my opinion for those places. So number 2 and number 3 is where I started having a massive debate with myself again, because this is between two teams that some people hype up, especially one of them. Some people hype up, some people are not so hyped up on. Number 3 will be Washington Justice. Now, I could easily have put Washington Justice second. Washington Justice, their tank line is possibly the best in the league in my opinion. Mag and Fury is just insane. I cannot express that enough. Then they have, obviously, not only extreme quality in the DPS department, but extreme quality in depth in the DPS department with Jerry, Decay, Tuba, and Assassin. That is incredible in terms of DPS diversity and DPS quality. So I think Washington, if they get any lower than third in NA, or in the West I should say, that would be a travesty for their season really. Like, this is a fantastic roster. However, the reason I rank them lower than the next two teams is because of their support line. Because it's Bebe and because it's closer. Two players who are okay, are decent, but are not to the levels of which these other two teams can offer. So I think that's where Washington Justice come up short slightly. However, if Washington Justice have got Bebe and Closer playing well, I think they could beat any team in the league with the roster they have. Quite capably. So Washington Justice, definitely a team to watch as well. Definitely. Number 2, I gave them the benefit of the doubt, Los Angeles Gladiators, because the support line in my opinion is better than Washington. That is simple. That is why I've gone for Washington. That's why I've gone for the Gladiators over Washington. Because Gladiators, they may have a slightly worse tank line than Washington actually. Well, I mean, I did just say that Mag and Fury is probably the best tank line in the league, but Space and Muse, they'll be good. I don't doubt they'll be good. DPS, Birdring, Kevster, Mirror, it's not changing. That's good. We want to see consistency. Kevster is a fantastic flex player. Very high potential. Birdring, incredible. And Mirror, also really, really fantastic as well, although I'm not expecting Mirror to play too much. Then we come to the supports. Moth and Shu will be your starting supports most likely. Moth, incredible experience. 2 times Overwatch League champion. Will come in, lead this team very well in the main support role. Then you've got Shu. Shu is a cracked flex DPS? When did he become a flex DPS? He's a cracked flex support, coming in from Guangzhou Charge. It's a loss for the Guangzhou Charge, but it's a massive gain for the Gladiators. Like, big upgrades in the support department for Gladiators this season. And then it's backed up by Skewed, who mostly is probably going to be coming in for Brigitte when it's needed, I would imagine. It does mean, however, they would swap out Moss, which is... don't like swapping out a potential in-game leader like that. That's rough. So, yeah, don't really want to see that, but I think that's a possibility. I do, however, think they have a tiny, tiny little bit more than Washington. Tiny, minuscule amount. But that does mean that number 1 inevitably is the San Francisco Shock, because, well, it's the Shock. Yes, they've made a few changes, but they still have Krusty as their head coach. They still have Caceres and Agape as assistant coaches. 2 fantastic assistant coaches there, by the way. And they still have probably one of the best all-around rosters in the league and the world. Like, Violet, Twilight, FD God. FD God was a role star last season. Choi Hyobin's still one of the best main tanks off tanks around. Super and Smurf cover every single main tank they'd ever need. Super's there for the leadership and pick me up as well. Then you have the DPS, which has changed the most. They still have a phenomenal DPS in Striker. Don't think anyone's going to argue with that. Tayo's there, but Nero, Flex DPS, I am sure he will be fantastic at the San Francisco Shock. Incredible skill on that guy. It's just had a rough season last season because of Guangzhou. And then Glister. Glister showed incredible potential at London Spitfire. I think he's a perfect replacement for Ans, because he's not only a really good hit scan, although we are hearing that scrims are going roughly, but scrims don't mean everything, you know. Glister had a great season last season for London on a really bad team. Now he's got coaching guidance of the very best, and I still think he's a great player. And he's preparing for the future for the San Francisco Shock. So, even if Shock don't get top seed, they'll still be fantastic. And they'll still be popping off in playoffs. Because that's just what the Shock do. And I don't think really that's going to change too much until Krusty leaves. So, yeah, I still can't not put San Francisco Shock top. But those are my power rankings for the West region for 2021. For April at least, anyway. I don't know, it might change. We'll see going into the season. Number 1, San Francisco Shock, followed by Los Angeles Gladiators, Washington Justice, Florida Mayhem, Dallas Fuel, Toronto Defiant, Atlanta Reign, London Spitfire, Houston Outlaws, Boston Uprising, Paris Eternal, and Vancouver Titans. Next up, we will be doing the East region, which is even more spicy, and that is going to be super interesting, so make sure you hit the bell and subscribe if you are waiting for that one, and you will get notified when it comes out. But all the socials are linked in the video description for Illusion Gaming and myself as per usual, but for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then!